Scan around the room real quick. All right. Before I joined the military, I thought I knew the world. Books, magazines, even the news. I thought I knew everything about Asia, the Middle East, even the East Coast. But when I left and I went to my first duty station, I had the biggest culture shock of my life. My first duty station was Korea. The people of Korea act totally different socially than we do as Americans. When you're in America, personal space is a big thing. Just standing around next to somebody can be uncomfortable if you don't know them and they're violating your personal space. When you're over in Korea, it's totally different. You could be standing next to somebody on a bus or on the street, even on a train, and they'll be right in your personal space, and it's a totally big violation for Americans. Extremely hard to get used to. The other thing is just walking next to somebody on the street. You will be standing next to them, and then all of a sudden they'll bump into you. And in America, a lot of times you can misconstrue that as them being rude or wanting to argue with you. Over in Korea, it's a totally different subject. It's just the way they do things. It's a way of life. The biggest culture shock, I think, while I was over there would have to have been the way that you act around the market and the different things you'll see in the market. While I was over there, I saw people eating dog for the first time. It was kind of different. When you go over to Korea and you see dogs in the market square, you think of it as being unsanitary. When I asked my friend Kwan about it, he said that some of them would be on the menu later. It was totally different for me. I ate sushi for the first time while I was in Korea. Sushi was fresh right off of the boat. He pulled the box out for the boat with the ice, gutted it, cleaned it, chopped it up, threw it on a plate, threw some lemon on it, and that was it. Driving was a totally big experience for me over there. I would think that street signs and stoplights and whatnot would be more for decoration than what they are. You get to the stop signs and you cruise right through them. In America, you know, you have to stop. If you don't, you get pulled over. Over there, taxi drivers just cruise on through and it's not a big thing. I also, there's not restricted sexually as we are as far as how they act with each other. You'll see males walking around the streets holding hands. It's not a big thing. It's not like they're homosexual. It's their friends, and that's how they act towards each other. The first time I saw a male sitting on the ground and another one sitting in between his legs, just relaxing, it was uncomfortable for me. But they're not restricted to sexual barriers like we are in the United States. My next big trip out of the United States was Mexico. You would think that being I'm Mexican, that wouldn't be such a big culture shock for me. But when I got there, I went to my wife's grandmother's refrigerator to grab a soda, and I saw a sheep head in the refrigerator. Little did I know that it was going to be part of dinner later. It was in the soup. Well, I also was there later on that week. We had pig in the soup as well. It was the pig's head, actually. It was quite different, but still delicious. Turning a 2-lane highway into 4 is a common thing in Mexico as well. You will have one set of drivers on the right side and the left side as usual, but if you want to pass, you come over towards the middle. The driver in front of you will move over. The driver on the other side will move over. The middle lane becomes a highway. Becomes another highway. It's extremely different, but it's a little bit more safer actually on a 2-lane highway. Men have it like kings over there, let me tell you. I would come home with my uncle from the fields in the evenings and we would sit down, have some beer, wouldn't be bothered by the wives with the children. Just sit back, relax, drink a cold beer, and it's not a big deal. I was even scolded once for trying to cook my own breakfast in the morning. I woke up earlier than everybody else in the house and I was hungry, so I decided to cook myself some eggs. And once my wife's grandmother woke up, she came into the kitchen, saw me cooking. She immediately went over, woke up my wife, and told her to get into the kitchen and make my breakfast for me. I enjoyed that. It was totally different, but it was nice. After that, my next big trip out of the United States would have been Iraq. Iraq was totally different as well. I went in there and I was going to thwart off the enemy with my mechanical prowess, I guess you would say. I was a mechanic attached to the Scouts, which was extremely wonderful. They treated me just as I was a Scout, even though I wasn't trained as one. I would go out on missions with them and do all the things that they did, but if their vehicles broke down, I had to do that as well. Guard duty was one of my bigger duties over there. Since I wasn't an actual Scout, they would throw me on guard duty as often as they could. So I experienced quite a few things on guard duty. I learned that the Iraqi soldiers would like to have fun on guard duty, other than doing what they're supposed to do. They would also bring a hookah out to the guard shack, and we would sit there and smoke flavored tobacco for about an hour or two. They would also teach you bad words. Just like in any culture, the first words you usually learn out of another language is going to be a bad word. So it's no different than any other culture. Next thing was the eating. Where can I get a nice big slab of pork over in Iraq, right? Not going to happen. The food was pretty good in most of the cases, but I've also learned that when you're eating food in another country, you really shouldn't ask what the meat is unless you really want to know what it is. If it's a different consistency than what you're used to, just eat it and don't think about it. I also learned that instead of serving utensils over there, a lot of times you will get them serving your food with your hands. This was the first place that I actually went and got a bowl of rice served to me with somebody's bare hand. Now, according to them, it's rude to not accept food, so you just eat it. And you eat it with your fingers just like they do. It's a little bit unsanitary, especially when you're out on mission all day moving crap around, and you don't want to, but you don't want to upset the locals because they take offense to things very easily, and then they do whatever it takes to get rid of you. Driving on the wrong side of the road in Iraq is a common thing for soldiers, and you think that you're special because you're driving on the wrong side of the road, going dodging traffic, but then you see the rest of the locals doing it, and you don't feel so special anymore. So it's a wonderful thing then. Jerry-rigging. Big thing in the United States also. You also see it, duct tape, whatever, you know, what clothing hangers even to hold up an exhaust. But jerry-rigging over there is a permanent fix in some cases. I've never seen anybody using pantyhose as a belt during most of my trips in the United States, but in Iraq it's a common thing. You'll see a plastic bottle with a rag stuffed in it as a gas cap. You'll see them holding up they're holding pieces of their vehicle together with a regular lacing wire or something like that. Making friends with the enemy. That's something I never thought I'd do, but when I was over there on guard shift 12 hours a day, every other day for about 8 months, one of the interpreters it was my same interpreter the whole time I was there. The Iraqi National Guard that was there the whole time was the same soldiers that I had always worked with, so it was a common thing to have a friendship with them. The soldiers that I thought that I was there to fight against ended up having my back when we got attacked the few times that we did at the front gate. They would be the first ones to throw rounds back down at the enemy. So it was kind of different, a little bit different than what I expected. But the interpreter that was up there became one of my closest friends. He ended up giving me a gift to my wife and myself. It was wedding bands. They were silver. They both had our names inscribed on the inside of the wedding band in Arabic. Then I moved to the East Coast. Well, not exactly the East Coast because it was south of the Mason-Dixon line, so it was the South. Southern hospitality isn't what you think it is when you get there. I thought that Southern hospitality, you know, they come in and they tell you, you know, welcome to the South and blah, blah, blah. No, it's not like that at all. You get there and Southern hospitality is a little bit different than what you learn in the movies. The South will rise again is definitely a big thing that they still think over there in that area, which was kind of a big kind of a change for me. You see a lot of people riding around with the Dixie flag still on their vehicles. They ride around. It was just simple things that you see makes it evident that the South is still very, very much alive. Racism was something that I encountered over there quite often in some of the smaller towns, But you would think that a place where the minority is the majority, that there wouldn't be so much racism. But there was, and you deal with it just like any other place. Ghosts are a very big thing in the South still. They have a lot of ghost tours. They have a lot of towns where they tell a lot of ghost stories as well. Even in the FTX, we had a little ghost story of our own. We would set up next to a cemetery, and the ghosts, we would set up next to a cemetery, and the ghosts that were supposedly still living in the cemetery would every once in a while come out again in the evenings. We even had a soldier that said he saw a lady walking across the cemetery, and when he called out her name, she turned around, looked at him, and then she turned back around to the way she was walking and disappeared. He was very scared, did not want to do guard duty anymore. So it was a different experience every time we went out to the field. But no matter where you grow up or what your culture is, if you leave home, you should always expect to experience something different. The food, anywhere to the modes of transportation, is always going to be different. And now that I'm a worldly traveler, and I've seen the temples in Korea, the ruins in Mexico, and even Babylon in Iraq, I always know one thing, that no matter what, I'm always going to be glad to be here in the good old USA. Thank you.